Today I'm going to show you how to make your own piping. When you're making bags, piping is a great way to add a little bit of structure to your bag. We use this technique for the Wholecloth Patterns Fairmount bag. This is view A. It has a line of piping that goes along the bottom curve of this bag. It adds a little bit of structure and helps it hold its curved shape. We also use piping in the Wholecloth Patterns Logan bag. Again, we're using it to define the circular shape at the bottom of the bag. It just gives it a little bit more structure that helps it hold that bucket shape even when you have stuff in the bag. You can buy piping cord in a bunch of different sizes, from about 1/8 of an inch in diameter at the small end up to around 2 inches in diameter at the bigger end. And sometimes they're designated by numbers. So 00 is the smallest one, and it's 1/8 of an inch in diameter. 01 is 3/16 of an inch, and 02 is 1/4 of an inch. These are the 3 sizes that I use the most when I'm sewing bags. They seem pretty thin, but remember, when we wrap fabric around them, they're going to bulk up. I'm going to demonstrate making piping with the 00 piping cord because that's what we're going to use on the Fairmount Bag sew-along. My dimensions will be specific to this 1/8 of an inch diameter cord. If you would like to use a different gauge of cord, you'll need to experiment a little bit and adjust your widths so that you get the seam allowance that you need. Let's get started. To make your own piping, you'll need a woven fabric, something to mark the fabric with, a ruler, scissors, and the 1/8 inch piping cord. The fabric cover for piping is cut on the bias. That's a 45-degree angle to the main grain of the fabric. If you'd like more information about the grain or the bias, check out my video, How to Make Double Fold Bias Binding. I'm going to skip all of that here. Suffice it to say that the little bit of stretch along the bias allows the piping to be smooth around curves. I've already found the bias on my fabric, so I'm going to begin by cutting a 1 1/4 inch strip down the bias edge of this fabric. And that 1 1/4 inches is to accommodate the 1/8 inch piping cord and have a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So here is my 1 1/4 inch strip of fabric. At this point, you can join 2 strips together if you need a longer length. I go over that in the How to Sew Double Fold Bias Binding video that's linked below, so I'm not going to go over it here. With the wrong side of the fabric facing up, we'll place the piping cord down the middle of the strip of fabric. Next, I'm going to fold the fabric over the piping cord and align the long raw edges. I'm going to pin these 2 edges together to hold the piping inside the fabric. Now that the whole edge is pinned, we'll sew the piping cord into the fabric. We're going to use a zipper foot for this because it will allow us to sew right up against the edge of our piping. So I've set up the zipper foot so that the needle will run right along the edge of the piping cord, and I'm just going to use that as my guide. Here's our finished piping. As you can see, the piping cord is very snugly sewn into the fabric, and this flap is the seam allowance that we'll use when we attach it to our project. Thanks for following along today. Be sure to check out the notes below the video for links from today's tutorial, and click subscribe to follow the Wholecloth Patterns Sewing channel.